YouTube? Tired Metalhead Weatherman here. Hopefully you guys are doing well. Few interesting things have unfolded since yesterday evening's video, so we're going to go ahead and jump right into that. And we're going to do things at a little bit of a change of pace today. We're actually going to take a look at the Canadian model, the GDPS. This model I don't really use as much, but in storms like this where I'm just trying to find even a hint of model agreement here to try to figure out what happens next, I'm calling in on the heavy artillery here. Usually the Euro or the GFS usually will end up agreeing with this, but even this has its own model, has kind of its own scenario playing out here. So this has been kind of tricky here. So we're going to use all three today. So here we go. This is what the Canadian's looking like on the model runs. We're going to jump forward to about the 20th. Scenario is still the same. Record cold is on the way. Probably the coldest Christmas in decades for many people. This the deepest part of this ridge also now is starting to take more of a negative tilt type of appearance now versus before. Yesterday I was noticing a little bit more of a trend towards a neutral tilt. That is now changed. Once again, we'll have to see what happens next with that. But one thing to note here is that cold air is starting to retreat a little bit to the north, just a tiny bit. That doesn't, and if there's any solace to be had in that at all, this cold air also seems to be pretty progressive in nature this time too. So this cold air isn't going to last as long as what I was originally thinking. So there's some good news to be had. But even so, for some people around here, there could be a big snow event. Some places could see high winds with this as well. Near blizzard conditions. We'll have to monitor these areas not only for winter storm watches and warnings, but potentially blizzard-like conditions. Whether we reach the criteria for a blizzard or not is still yet to be seen. The jury's still out on that. But here we are looking at the 23rd. Deep cold air really starting to settle in here. A lot of energy with this system, but it's tracking a little bit more to the north and east, so this could affect snowfall totals here. I'm really not going to get into snowfall totals till probably tomorrow, honestly, because I think it's just a little too early to jump into that. So this is heading into the morning of Christmas Eve, and this storm system's still going on around the far reaches of the northeast by this point. Storm system's moving a little faster than what we were previously anticipated. We also have to watch for these little pieces of shortwave energy that pop off around the Ohio Valley, which could add to the snowfall totals here. Because for whatever reason, it looks like there is some agreement on some type of low pressure popping out from the Gulf or popping out just from the southeast coast here, and this will bring a little bit of warm air out ahead of this. So some areas will be starting out as rain, and then maybe heading in, then switching over to snow throughout the course of this event. So we'll have to see what happens here, but there's a lot of question marks still with this as well. Then interestingly enough, we have another event that comes in. Shortwave pieces of energy popping up here around the southeast even a couple of days after Christmas, and that could be interesting in its own right. And really, we'll have to watch this, apparently according to the Canadian, all the way to the end of this model run, which is about the 28th. Before we start to see a considerable warm-up here. Getting back into familiar territory. I'm going to roll this forward. And it's pretty much the same scenario, but notice that, look at this little run here. Canadian looks a little bit more similar to the GFS. Still got that negative tilt to the trough, but cold air is a little bit further north. The GFS drags a little bit more cold air south, but I think this will bring in a little less moisture according to this run. And then this will also turn into a bigger snowstorm towards the northeast and mid-Atlantic, especially towards the interior northeast. This has a more progressive run than even the Canadian models do, so we'll have to keep an eye on that. And then there's these little shortwave pieces of energy that are going to be going around as we get into the week after Christmas, I should say. And then towards the 28th, another big storm system looks to be coming in. But I think with this one, we're warmer, and the potential for severe weather is going to have to be monitored. Okay, so now let's jump back to the euro. And we'll start out by having a very similar look, and then it's not really until we get to about 90 plus hours out where we start to notice little differences here. There's a little small wedge right here that kind of pops up out ahead of this trough here as it starts to deepen. And this becomes a question mark here because it's almost like there's another piece of energy that pops up here in the Gulf. And as a result, this ends up almost kind of pushing this trough a little bit, or preventing this trough from moving further north, almost like the southeast ridge is starting to come into play here and kind of kicks it back this way. You'll see in just a second as I move this forward. But notice that cold air doesn't quite reach as far south as previously anticipated. You still get cold temperatures, but not nearly as cold as what we were originally expecting. Interestingly enough, though, after this system, we get several shortwave pieces of energy, which brings greater snow opportunity for Ohio Valley and the Mid-Atlantic. But then after that, it's a little bit more quiet, a little bit quicker, and it's also warmer a little bit quicker. So there's a lot of different scenarios going on once we get past 90 hours out, and that's going to be the key point right here. The record cold over here, that's pretty much almost set in stone. Pretty much every model I've looked at so far has had agreement on this. Once we get around this region is where a lot of questions lie. It would be at this point unwise to try to look at just one model for this because you may end up getting disappointed because there's just not much model agreement. And when there's model agreement like that, trying to make a forecast on this is pure madness, really, because if that model ends up being wrong, it just makes you feel really small. I've made that mistake plenty of times. Let's go ahead and switch over to the GFS and actually look at the temperatures now. So here we are looking at the early hours of the 20th and into the late hours of the 20th into the 21st. The time is right here in the right hand corner. 7 p.m. Eastern time. That's the time zone I'm in, and we'll watch this cold air quickly start to roll in from that point. And as we get into the 22nd, that's when we start seeing this trough deepen, and we already know the deal with this. GFS is extremely cold. Some areas towards far northern Georgia, for example, you'd be seeing 2 degrees. Far northern Alabama at 6 degrees. And then some parts of even northern Oklahoma are looking at temperatures below zero. This is not the wind chill. This is the actual air temperature, which is insane to think about. And then as we watch this go on, this cold air eventually does start to lose a little bit of steam here. But as we go forward, we got areas over towards the western half of the Great Lakes. We're getting areas where we're 15 to 20 degrees below zero on Christmas morning. So it's going to be a very frigid start to your Christmas. Make sure the kids are extra bundled up overnight and when they open those presents as well. As we move this forward, this cold air starts to ease up once we get towards the 26th. By the afternoon, we're starting to get back into those more positive temperatures. And by the 27th, we're starting to break out of this little record snap of cold air here. In comparison, here is the Canadian model. We can get this to open up here. Here we go. All right, so here we are. We're going to just jump right ahead to where this trough really starts to kick in and deepen. It's pretty much a similar look. It's a similar look, but we can see here towards the towards the evening of the 23rd, a lot of areas towards the southeast are going to be really cold. We're going to see some record low temperatures here for sure, even towards the just the south in general. Up towards the north, we're getting temperatures about probably 20 to 30 degrees below zero. Those wind chill advisories are going to be in effect because there will be quite a bit of wind energy with this, and we'll look at that in just a minute as well. But this is us at Christmas Eve morning here. We're dealing with temperatures at about maybe 7, 8 degrees over towards about between 8 to 14 degrees, excuse me, around Dallas. Oklahoma City's looking at 11 degrees. This is going to be a Christmas for the record books, regardless of whether or not you get snow. Over towards the Ohio Valley, we're looking at temperatures at 0 or below 0. Negative temperatures are possible too. Below 0 temperatures are possible too. And then as we roll this forward, again, 25th looks like, or just after the 25th, looks like when we start to get a break from this cold air. Some regions over towards the western Great Lakes are going to deal with it a little bit longer, but after that, it looks like the cold air will start to retreat back to the north. Although the Canadian model seems to have this colder air lingering for a little bit longer. We'll jump over to the Euro really quickly, where we'll probably end up seeing a similar look. The Euro has this a lot warmer, as I was saying earlier, where we have a situation where that low around the Gulf comes in and just kind of keeps things away from really starting to deepen around the southern part of the states, especially towards the southeast. Still gets cold, but not as quickly. And this cold air really isn't allowed to expand much further. I think there's even potential for single-digit temperatures, but Euro's showing a little bit different of a picture. But also the Euro kind of warms up a little bit faster like the GFS. So again, it's a little bit messy trying to figure out what's going to happen here. So it's going to be a toss-up. It's going to be difficult to try to figure out what happens next with this. We're going to go ahead and take a look now at the wind chills really quickly. Or, well, not the wind chills, but the winds themselves. And this will correlate into wind chills. So here we are. We're looking at the point where our trough will start to deepen. These winds are 10 meters above the surface. And once this starts to deepen, we do get some areas where we're getting towards that 40 to 50 mile per hour range, which is really unnerving considering how cold the temperatures are going to be. And this even works its way into the southern plains. Really dangerous temperatures, really dangerous wind chills look like they're going to be ahead for a lot of regions. This is probably going to be the furthest south I think I've ever seen wind chill advisories, maybe even wind chill warnings. Because I don't think I've ever seen anything like this with winds of this magnitude with such cold air in abundance as well. And this even makes its way towards the southeast now too. So I think if you've never been under a wind chill advisory or a wind chill warning, if I would educate yourself on that and be prepared, because the next few days leading up to Christmas are going to be pretty wild. Even before the cold really hits towards the eastern half of the country, the winds are already going to be screaming in some places. These are going to continue to linger. And for some of these areas, you could very well see blizzard conditions even after the snow falls. The snow will just start blowing around. I think blowing snow warnings blowing snow advisories may be in effect towards the Ohio Valley, towards the Great Lakes, maybe even the Mid-Atlantic. It's going to be crazy. And then as we go on, we see these other little pieces of shortwave energy. They'll have their own winds with them, but by this point, hopefully some areas will start to thaw out a little bit. Some of the snow will start to diminish, and we'll have to just go from there. But this is one of the three models over here. GFS actually hasn't looked too different from this either, alarmingly. So area of wind is a little bit smaller, but we're still seeing plenty of wind gusts above 20 miles an hour. With this, you really just don't need much in order for this to become a very uncomfortable situation for anyone that's already seeing temperatures near zero. The wind is really just insult to injury. And the reason I'm showing you this is to make sure that you're prepared, because this is not something you want to mess around with. So the worst of the wind actually kind of stays a little bit further to the south, hanging more towards the Gulf here. And a lot more of this wind also looks like it tries to stay offshore here, which is weird, but I do think the winds are potentially going to be a little bit stronger around here. The GFS isn't really, I don't think this map here is really highlighting things, but in order to do that, I would have to go on to pivotal weather for the GFS, and that never goes well for me. So I'll probably make a post on that to try to give you guys a better idea of what's going on. My computer just isn't able to handle that right now. But upgrades are coming. I will give you guys that little vignette. Anyway, this is what we're looking like through Christmas morning according to the GFS on the winds. Winds are already kind of dying off by this point according to this map here. And then these other shortwave pieces of energy will have smaller wind fields of their own, but nothing compared to what we've been seeing. And by that point, also, we will be dealing with a lot less cold air. When we make our comparison to the Euro, we've already jumped ahead to about 60 hours out. And Euro kind of looks more like the Canadian model, maybe even worse than Canadian model in a lot of ways, because we're seeing a lot of winds heading towards 50 miles an hour. These will be considered criteria for wind warnings, and these are 6-hour max winds at 10 meters above the surface. So a lot of these winds will be making it to the surface in some way, shape, or form. So for a lot of areas around here, the concern will also not only be for frozen precipitation, but blowing precipitation, limited visibility. We'll just have to see what happens next with this, but either way, this is not going to be a system that you want to mess with. You want to make sure that you have a way to stay warm, even if power goes out at this point. If you got any generators, I'd start getting them pretty soon. Time is running out. If you're in this area, this is when I would start going to the store and buying a little bit more bread and milk, I would say at this point. I'm not going to say clean it out, because really you should already been slowly preparing towards that. And hopefully by that point everyone would have a shot at getting what they need. But time is running out, I will say that much. And these winds are going to be lingering throughout the holiday pretty much. Even through Christmas for a lot of areas towards the far northern states. You're still going to be dealing with a lot of wind, probably dealing with leftover snowfall. Snow will be blowing around, so it'll be tough to travel. I'll say that much. And then towards the 26th, with these shorter wave pieces of energy, you're still going to have a little bit of leftover wind energy, but not quite in the same abundance as before. And then towards the 29th, it looks like things are going to start to calm down a bit. So let's have a look at the wind chills now, and this is going to be pretty crazy to look at considering what we've just seen from a lot of these models in regards to just wind speed alone. So when you couple that in with the temperatures that we have, this is the result we end up getting, and it's not a pretty one. I'm going to be honest. It's really not. I'm not going to be the type to sugarcoat things on this channel. I'm going to tell you the truth, and if you don't like it, I'm sorry, but at least I'm trying to keep you ahead of the game here. But yeah, this is what we're dealing with. This is on the 21st. This is before the worst of the cold air really starts to come in. We're already getting some places getting wind chills around nearly 40 below zero. So this is definitely wind chill warning material criteria right here at the very least. And as this cold air starts to deepen, we're gonna definitely see areas where we could see 50 below around here. And you can even see the below zero wind chills starting to spread further to the south and east. Ohio Valley's in it as well. Oklahoma City, you guys are going to be really cold, so just be prepared for that. Make sure you have either some firewood or decent number of space heaters. Also, make sure you're practicing your fire safety with the space heaters as well, because this is another way people can be hurt or worse in these type of events. So these single-digit temperatures even work their way into southern Texas, and then once we get into morning hours of Christmas morning, we have negative wind chills as far south as my hometown in Atlanta, which is crazy. We have negative wind chills as far east even as Pennsylvania at this point, and then we'll watch this deepen a little bit further as we get into Christmas. And then after that, we start to get a little bit of relief. Still getting single digits, so I'd be hard-pressed to call it relief, but it's better than having below zero. I'm trying to find some lighten all of this, if any at all, really, because this is not going to be fun. I'll put it that way. Worst part is I have to work in this. So even on Wednesday, you can still see over towards where I live the negative wind chill. The wind chill's not in the negatives, but it's in the teens. And this is for the early morning hour, so this is gonna be interesting for me. Hopefully, I have enough clothing to layer myself up in, and I hope that a lot of you will be looking to do the same. So let's go ahead and look at that on the euro as well. It's not going to be too much different. There probably will be a slight deviance, but not very much of one. It's probably going to be by only a handful of degrees, but for most of us, it's not going to feel too much different. Cold is cold, and this isn't going to be fun. If this will load. No, I'm asking a lot out of the computer at this point. Oh, there it is. Here we are, looking at the 21st, and seems like we get a little bit of pushback here heading into the 22nd, like the cold isn't going to kick in, but there it is. And the cold's a little bit more widespread further to the north. But these negative wind chills are still going to be coming in for the southeast, towards the eastern half of the country as well. So, and this is coming in the day before Christmas Eve. Is probably going to be the coldest day, and probably Christmas Day too is going to be pretty frigid. Once we get into Christmas, into the afternoon of Christmas Day and into the 26th, that's when the cold air starts to retreat back to the north just a little bit. And it really isn't until the 28th, according to the euro, where we start to warm back up just slightly. Even so, the wind chills around the southeast, still in the 20s. Negative wind chills still existing around the northeast, around the northern plains. Only around the southern plains is where we start to look like we're getting a little bit closer to normal, where we have wind chills towards the 50s and 60s. So for you guys, you guys will be out of this first, over towards Louisiana, Arkansas, and some parts of even Oklahoma, southern Oklahoma, I should say. But anywhere else, with the exception of California too, maybe, and parts of southern Arizona, it's going to be frigid. It's going to be really frigid. So, best thing I can tell you is be on the lookout here. Now, we're going to try a thing here, and here's hoping that it works. We're going to do this. We're putting the GFS on Pivotal Weather up. The Tropical Tidbits version of the GFS doesn't have the wind chill and heat index, so we're going to just try to see how we can compare these three together and just hope for the best. That being said, let's go ahead and get into it here. So far, so good. We know how the GFS tends to always be a bit colder, so we already have an idea of what to expect, especially with the other two models being as cold as they've been. Not quite as cold up towards the northern states on the wind chill as it is more towards the south. It's still pretty identical though. Negative wind chills in the same places. This cold air doesn't go away in any sense, but maybe towards the 27th it looks like we get a little bit warmer faster than the other two models here. So a lot going on there, but it seems like regardless, this is going to be a very cold Christmas, a very historic Christmas. A lot of record lows will be broken. A lot of new advisories that people haven't heard of will probably be issued for you. So if you're a weather nerd, this is cool, but also kind of crummy, because I don't think anyone wants to be this cold for Christmas, especially if you don't end up getting any sort of precipitation out of it too. Speaking of precip, let's go ahead and take a look at that finally. So the most interesting one to note as far as the precip models are concerned is actually the Canadian, particularly because this one seems to have the most moisture associated with it. It'll be interesting to see which of these three play out, because this is where these three really start to become set apart, so to speak. We can see these little shortwave pieces of energy here. that are popping up, and this is going to be a key player in a lot of this for the southeast in regards to your winter weather potential. Over towards these regions here, you're shooing, you're getting snow. There's no question about it. You're going to have a white Christmas. But interestingly enough, we may even have to watch Oklahoma City for that. But here's one low that develops here, and then another piece of energy here brings up some snow and wintry precip towards the Virginias and Mid-Atlantic. But here's what ends up happening here. We get this little low that pops up towards the Ohio Valley. A lot of areas here will start out as rain, and then there's going to be plenty of wraparound snow on the backside of this. But that tail stretches further into the southeast right now. But if this low were to track a little further south, that becomes a bigger deal for the southeast. And if that low deepens further to the south, this could be a snow event further back towards the Ohio Valley, and then even towards the Mississippi River Valley as well. On the backside of this low gets pretty strong, but anyone that's over towards the coast of the Northeast and towards the Mid-Atlantic, it looks like you guys are going to probably get stiffed, and your snow totals will be either minimal or you may not get anything at all. Beyond that, we see these little shortwave pieces of energy come through. One pushes really far to the south and brings snow potential towards the southeast. Although the snow totals will be limited, be an interesting thing to see. It will give me some solace, that's for sure. Because I don't want to be in this kind of cold weather without some kind of precip that's not ice, really. I don't want freezing rain. And we're probably not going to get too much of that, considering how cold this area is. But towards the 28th, there's another system that we'll have to watch that has a shortwave piece of energy. It's a little bit closer to the warm air, though, so we may have to watch the threat for freezing rain here with this. And then we'll watch another piece of shortwave come in, and this may also become a factor for the far northern tier of the U.S. So let's go ahead and switch over to our precip on GFS. So here's how the GFS tends to start with this system. We're looking more towards so this is heading into the 22nd. This is 7 o'clock on the 21st. This is when the storm system rolls in. All that cold air comes in behind it with the moisture from the northwest. This moisture shield ends up going a little bit further to the south. This also will include Oklahoma City at this point. So you could see moderate to heavy snow there according to this model. And this digs a little further to the south, but again, there's a little piece of energy that pops up here that tries to push this off to the north here. And this low will end up would end up traveling further north, and this will end up stifling a lot of these areas over here, limiting your snowfall, and also limiting snowfall for the southeast as well, because that warm air will be pushed out really far ahead of it. But you still will see heavy snow over towards the interior northeast for sure. And this also could be a hazardous scenario because that cold air is also going to be coming in so fast that even if you don't see a lot of snow, a lot of that moisture that did make it to the ground is going to freeze very quickly. So for these guys, I'm not sure that that's going to be too big of a problem. You guys are prepared for this kind of weather. If this became a situation more so towards the southeast, that's where my concern would really start to lie. But we'll watch that move out. And then again, same story, shortwave pieces of energy pop up here. This feature looks really interesting, but it looks like it's going to stay offshore. And then, of course, once we get towards New Year's, the severe weather threat becomes more of a thing. Last but not least, of course, we will compare the Euro. And the Euro is the one that really seems to stifle a lot of people out of snowfall on this one. So it's really hard to really make a forecast of any kind on this because these models are probably going to flip-flop at least 1 or 2 more times within the next 6 runs leading up to the event. So this is going to be a headache for a lot of people in the weather community. We'll run this all the way up to... Notice it doesn't have as much moisture with it as well. It stays a little further to the north. We have this piece of energy that kicks in, and then another piece of energy tries to develop here. but that snow shield stretches a little bit further south, but it doesn't go all the way to the south like the Canadian does. So it also has a little bit of a chance of some ice being possible here. It's a small swath, but we'll have to keep an eye on it. But this also gets pushed way further to the north. And then, of course, we'll have to watch this piece of energy here, and then yet another over here. But these stay a little bit further to the north versus the Canadian. So a lot to keep track of here. Almost out of breath trying to keep up with it. But just stay tuned. I'll keep tracking this day by day leading up to the event. And hopefully you guys take the advice. Stay warm. These wind chills are probably going to be the most dangerous thing about this system. Jury's still out on who gets snow, who gets a white Christmas right now. But a lot of people are still in play for it. I'll put it that way. But also let me know in the comments, what are you for? Are you team snow? Are you team white Christmas? Are you fine with no snow? Are you fine with the cold? Are you saying, just get me out of here? I'm tired of all this. Just warm up already. Just let me know your thoughts in the comments overall. That being said, if you liked anything I did in this video, definitely drop me a like. Also, 81%, actually 82% of you guys aren't subscribed to my videos, which is crazy. If you've been here watching a lot of my videos lately, what harm will it do? I mean, it's free to do so. I'm not asking you to pay me. I like doing this. I'll do this for free for as long as I have to. Or I can just keep doing it free. It doesn't bother me. So, help a guy out here. But anyway, this has been Tired Metalhead Weatherman. Again, you guys stay warm. Happy holidays. I'll see you probably tomorrow afternoon. Until then, take care. Have a good one.